Teachers of Reddit, what is the creepiest thing you've ever seen a child do? Say? I'm a teacher's aide for a 3-year-old program at a small school, and this is one of the freakiest experiences of all my 2 years being there. This child, Diego, was given the assignment to draw his family. He was all smiles and giggles while doing it, and drew his family in color, except for one figure, which was taller than the rest and colored in black. When I asked him who that figure was, the smile disappeared from his face and he became silent and would just stare down at his lap. I asked about his family. Apparently he just has a brother and both his parents living at home, which would account for 4 figures. The black figure was the 5th. Just to let you all know, it's not Slenderman. The only thing I was able to get out of Diego was Fernando when I pointed to the figure and asked who that was. Dude, you need to find out if this kid has an Uncle Fernando or some crap like that. Sounds to me like that tall black person is someone close to the family that abuses him. Could be a friend of the family, or his brother's friend, or even some random stranger. First thing I thought of was the library policeman. Not a teacher, just a parent. But when my youngest daughter had just started to learn to talk, she'd always say, "Night daddy." Then all of a sudden one night, and for about a solid 2-month period after that, she'd get really quiet as we were saying goodnight and whisper, "Don't die." Seriously, having a 2-year-old suddenly get all serious and whisper, "Don't die" is about the creepiest thing ever. Then a few months later she changed it up and her nightly farewell to me was, "Daddy, don't die. Don't kill. Good night daddy. Don't let the woman in your closet eat your eyes. I like your eyes." I was a teacher's aide my senior year, and there was this girl in the class who got picked on for being poor. I would always defend her and make a special point to talk her up. Because I was well liked by the kids, she was no longer being teased and those same bullies would now play with her. So one day, she asks me if I have a girlfriend. I tell her I do. She then says that she wishes she was my girlfriend so that we could frick. My freaking jaw hit the floor and made it a point to only be around her when there was another adult present. I forgot to mention, this was a 1st grade class. She was 6. Her concept of fricking was probably just holding hands. Former high school teacher here. A student once made a doll of me, complete with outfit, and carried it around school for a day, until the guidance department got her and told her that wasn't appropriate. The same student emailed me at my personal email address years later on the day she turned 18 to let me know it was her birthday. I work at a school in the Middle East that attracts a lot of privileged kids from the region. The other day, a boy came running up to me looking huffy, and he said that another kid had been hitting him. He finished his complaint with the following gem: "Sir, I'm not his maid. He can't just hit me whenever he wants." I'm guessing either Saudi Arabia or Qatar. Primary here. One child came into school with their usual favorite Doctor Who sonic screwdriver. Naturally, the LSA, teaching support, took it off them and said they could have it at the end of the day, and pocketed it. Later the day the teacher noticed the class was smelling a little odd, so casually wandered the class to see if they could identify the possible poop child. No avail. So the LSA went to lunch. Following the usual sandwich and snacks, the smell was still apparent. So, they checked their pocket. Lo and behold, the sonic screwdriver had lodged inside bits of poop. Following a lot of gagging and washing, the LSA returned to the class and confronted the child. Turns out, the child had used to it literally poke poop, stir it around and such. The kicker is the poop wasn't even the child's, just a log found in the toilets. Delightful. TLDR. Kid poked poop with sonic screwdrivers for fun. Little girl wanders up to me one day when I was teaching 1st grade and says, "Mr. Rain, I freaking hate math." Dumbfounded, I said what, and bless her heart she thought I didn't hear her, so she screams at the top of her lungs, "I said I freaking hate math." Not my greatest day in the classroom. My aunt is a secretary for an elementary school and gets this constantly. She says it's still a challenge not to crack up. I'm a preschool teacher in the 3-4-year-old room. The other day, after putting a child in a thinking time, which is essentially a timeout, I went over to talk to him about what he had done. Me, Thomas, can you talk to me and tell me why you are on a thinking time? Thomas, staring forward, Not meeting my eyes. No. And I'll come to your house and kill you if you make me. I stood there completely shocked. Then, he stood up, looked me straight in the eye, and laughed maniacally for a minute before hugging me and sitting back down. Kids are scary little shoots. That is freaky. I've always taught my kids not to tell people of their plans for murder, especially not the intended victim. The class was drawing on outline shapes of boys' and girls' bodies. The outline of the faces had the mouths open, in a O face. Me. Constantine. What is that you drew on that girl's mouth? Constantine. A dong. Me. Why did you do that? Constantine. Because my daddy told mommy if she opens up her mouth it should be to put his dong in it. Constantine was 4. We had a parent-teacher conference with his parents the next evening. It blew over. And then he grew up to fight demons with sheer LABF. When I was a summer camp counselor, does this count as a teacher? Our group of kids was getting ready to leave the building, but this one kid was sitting away from everyone else. I went up to him, asked him what was wrong, and he said I'm angry. I asked him what he was angry about, and he leans really close to me and whispers, "The owls have dead eyes." Really creeped me out. You have to give it to him though, they kinda do. When I was in 5th grade we had a buddy thing with 1st graders. One time we had to go to recess with them, and I let my buddy out of my sight for a second. I found her in a deserted corner eating dirt. When I asked her why she was doing it, she turned to me, growled, and said, "On my planet we eat dirt. And you have to follow the prime directive. So, carry on." Had a kid threaten to find where I live and violate my wife. I'm not married, so it was his assumption. He was removed from the school shortly after. I used to teach after school. One of my students said "You're all fat" to a group of students. I guess she felt really bad about it, so she wrote them all cards with "You're not that fat" written on the inside. That isn't so much creepy as slightly adorable. I said "Trust me, I'm a doctor" to a kid, then all eyes turned to me. "Are you really a doctor?" "No, it's just a saying." Then one boy, without looking up from his work, says, "My daddy pretended to be a doctor. He got in trouble." Kids are like windows that you look through to see how fricked up the world is. School social worker here. One kid I saw, she was 16 by then, was from 8 years until 16 in pornos. Her parents forced her into it. We're talking fricking with animals, poop and pee fetishes, beating fetishes, fricking with family members. The kid didn't understand why any of these things were wrong. If she saw a pole, she'd dance. If she was alone with anyone, she would begin physical stuff. The kid was completely trashed, and let's just hope that she can recover. She also had fricked often with her brothers and sisters. She was hardwired from a young age to be a frick machine, and it was incredibly disturbing. This happened to one of my male co-workers in an elementary after-school program. Co-worker was holding a tin of chocolate chip cookies for a party we were having later that day. A 3rd grade girl, who up until then was my favorite student, asked him for a cookie and he said no, these are for later. She then said, "Give me a cookie or I'm gonna tell everyone you touched me in my privates." Not a teacher, but when I was in middle school I had a really creepy classmate. One of our teachers, who this girl really hated, had a miscarriage, and when this girl found out, she left her baby doll covered in ketchup and wrapped in plastic wrap on the teacher's doorstep. Former high school, remedial English. Girl left to go to the bathroom, took a while, so I sent another girl to check on her. There was a line of boys outside the girl's bathroom. Apparently she was giving BJ after BJ to whoever walked up. Apparently she had done this before and been caught. Another female faculty member returned her to my class and got me up to speed on her. I don't know the girl's history. I just tried to treat her with respect and stay away from any negativity when talking to her. She was suspended, same as what happened the first time. This was Kathleen High School in Lakeland, FL. We were actually on all the cable news channels for a big shootout manhunt of a cop killer. I somehow always stumble into interesting or unusual situations like these. Me and my brother volunteered as part of the Big Brother Big Sister thing, and on my brother's birthday his little brother gave him a card that opened up and sang. It was supposed to be a picture of a bunch of people inside yelling surprise. but for every person the little brother had cut out pictures of his own head and glued them on. It looked really creepy. That is hilarious though. Not a teacher, but remember some weird classmates. When I was in grade school, we would periodically find dead seagulls in the backfield, possibly killed by neighborhood cats, or whatever. And this one girl decided one day to put one on her head and chase the other kids around the schoolyard with it. I'm talking a dead seagull that had been ripped open and had bloody guts all over it. I'm more of a tutor than a teacher, but the story works nonetheless. It's also more funny than creepy. I tutor 2 kids. One is 9 and the other is 6. When it was the 6-year-old's turn to work with me, the 9-year-old would get on the computer. This kid had a serious addiction to computers, by the way, so after the 6-year-old had finished with me, he wanted to get on the computer, but his brother was on it. The 9-year-old told the 6-year-old to pee off and then kept playing some game. Meanwhile, the 9-year crapped his pants, because if he got up from the computer his brother would get on it. The 6-year started crying because he absolutely had to get on the computer. He ran upstairs in a fit and I didn't see him or hear him for at least 15 minutes. Wondering if something had happened to him, I went upstairs and found him in the process of dropping a massive turd on the middle of his brother's bed. Kids are scary little turds. First time post, but the topic motivated me. Public school teacher for 16 years. I teach 6th grade and am the only male teacher on the grade level, so most of the rough kids and severe autistic student are given to me. I don't mind as it makes the job an adventure. Had a spoiled rotten kid who bullied all others in class constantly. New student showed up from LA having been shipped out to his grandmother to live. Meeting with the school counselor, I was informed he has witnessed his mother's boyfriend beat his mother to death in the front seat of a car a few weeks earlier. Good to know, give the kid some slack in class. Spoiled rotten bully sees a potential victim and taunts him in class. Hey new kid, you ain't so bad. You ain't tough coming from LA. I pull bully outside and read him the riot act, telling him the kid is new and is probably having a rough time as he lost his mother recently. Cut it out or I make your life at school miserable. Bully shrugs it off and we go back in. A while later bully is heard saying to the new kid, "Stop looking at me or I am going to smash your face at recess." Nobody wants to look at your face, especially your mother. I move bully to face a corner to do his work and tell him he will be spending some time with me and his mother after school in a conference. Kids go to recess. 15 minutes later I go outside to bring the students back in and don't see the bully or the new kid. Panic. I ask around and a few kids say they are fighting out on the basketball court. Crap. I run down the hall and round the corner to see the new kid sitting on the bully's chest, just slugging him in the face over and over with rage, akin to a bloody war scene from Braveheart as the bully attempts to fend off the bombs. I was probably 40 feet away but made the most lackadaisical snail's pace to walk over to them to break it up. Don't get me started on the autistic kids. I have a million hilarious stories. They are the most fantastic yet trying kids I have ever worked with. I've been teaching 6-year-olds for the last 2 months and a few weeks ago one of the kids creeped the frick out of me. Every Monday we take a trip to a nearby forest so the kids can run off the energy they've saved up during the weekend. During our walk between the school and there we walk in pairs in a line. This day, on our way back, I end up walking last with this kid who didn't get a walking partner. This particular kid is a very talkative, super cheerful little guy who's rarely down or grouchy. Anyway, we're walking back to the school and about halfway there he says, out of nowhere, "Hey, not random at all?" "Yeah," I say, and turn to him. He stops, looks me in the eye, sporting an ear-to-ear grin, and says, "I'm gonna cut your throat," running a finger across his throat, still looking happy as ever. I kept a close eye on him the rest of the day. Sounds like he could be acting out things he's seen, heard, hopefully just on the TV. During our yearly puberty class I had a student ask what happens if the condom gets stuck. Another student shot his hand up and said confidently, "Pliers." Dear God. Another episode in that class was when another student asked if you could pee in a girl's tea and if she could drink her own breast milk. My favorite quote from one of my students is when they were curious about fellatio and one kid shot up his hand and said, "I know what it is." "Oh, do you, Jimmy?" "Yes. It's when you say hello we are fricking." I died on the spot. I'm going to say this while fricking from now on, and then tell my husband he should be grateful he's getting oral. Sorry I'm late to the party, but here's mine. I had dumbass student who was joking about how the calcium sulfate I had in the lab was C. Long story short, I turn around and see this kid rail a freaking line of the stuff. He screamed, then got the most hardcore bloody nose I've seen to this day. To be fair to him, he committed to that joke in a really big way. Playing football with a pigeon. Playing football with a cat. 2 boys hitting a girl in the face with a huge log of wood. Children are creepy. Yes, using the animals as the ball. And European football. Well, I'll break up the creepy party for a minute. I asked a kindergartner what his favorite animal was and he looked up at me and said an apple. Not really a child because I teach at a university, but I'm a young teacher, 22, and, as such, a few of my students are actually older than me. It's not usually a problem, but one student in particular was pretty hostile to me in class and enjoyed trying to contradict me, baselessly, I might add, in front of the rest of the class whenever he could. A few weeks ago, I went out to run a few quick errands. It was the weekend, so I wasn't dressed up, just wearing yoga pants and tank top. As I passed by the outdoor smoking patio of a local bar, I hear some guy catcall me, "Hey, baby, come have a drink." I keep my head down and keep walking, but he keeps going, and the guy he was with eventually joins in. "Come on, bring that tight butt back here." I wheel around because I recognize the voice and see my problem student. I watch the recognition dawn on his face as he pulls his hat down and flees back into the bar. That Monday was awkward. One of my students told another teacher that she was dating a boy from a different class. She mentioned where he went to school, who some of his friends were, the area he lived in, the route he took home, etc. Later the teacher ran into the boy and teased him about his girlfriend. The kid looked absolutely horrified. They weren't actually dating. She was just sort of stalking him. Well, there are two. His was about 10 years ago when I was a teacher's assistant. I worked in a special education setting. This boy got very mad about something. He had emotional issues. He began to throw things and wanted to leave the room. I stood in front of him. He said, "Move or I'm going to punch you." I stood my ground and told him, "No, if you have to punch me, then go for it." He did, right in the stomach. The look in his face, however, was priceless. It was an "oh my god, what did I just do" face. I said, "There, you happy now?" He then went back to his seat and worked quietly for the rest of the day. Oh, and I also caught a boy fapping in my classroom 5 years ago. A guy in my school said to a teacher he wanted to cut off one of the students' breasts and use it as a bowl to drink out the breast milk. Nothing like drinking milk out of a warm bag of sand. My photography teacher was telling us about weird students he'd taught in the past. The best story featured a 17-18-year-old lad who had decided to look at poverty for his photography coursework. To do this he went to a block of high-rise flats. Apparently when he handed in his book containing all his photos and the teacher was surprised to find it was very damp. The teacher asked why it was wet and he replied matter-of-factly, "I urinated all over my book, so the smell would match that of the tower block." I can't decide if that's artistic, creepy, or both. My mum has worked as a receptionist administrator at a few primary secondary schools over the last few years. She was at a religious school, and these students went on a school missionary trip to Africa for like a month. And there was this girl on the trip and she came back really depressed. Her parents didn't know what happened. She stopped doing schoolwork, etc. Turns out the African priest running the program took her into the church and violated her every night for pretty much the entire trip. They only found out what happened when he tried to violate another girl from a different school on the next trip. She must have been about 14 at the time. Oh, you thought the story finished there? Nah, this is school and children are cruel. And some kids set up a Facebook page mocking her, photoshopping her face onto interracial p etc. Girl left the school and went into therapy and never came back. TLDR. Don't go on a missionary tour to Africa if you're a 14-year-old girl. I'm sure there was a news story. Really worried about what to type into Google here. Well, that freaking depressed the crap out of me. We live in a split-level house. My wife and I sleep in our bedroom on the lower level. Our kids sleep in the bedrooms on the upper level. A few years ago, our youngest, who was probably 2 at the time, came downstairs late at night, crying. My wife put her in our bed to calm her down and was asking her what was the matter. Our daughter told us. The kids keep talking and laughing. I went upstairs to dad rage at our other 2 kids, tell them to go to sleep. They're both in a deep sleep. No matter how much you might think otherwise, young kids can't fake sleeping well enough to fool a parent. It happened again a couple of times. Once she looked at me around dinner time and told me that she couldn't sleep in her room because the voices kept her up. It's not so scary retelling it, I guess, but at 3 in the morning it's pretty goddamn creepy. Dang, I'm not a teacher. I accidentally didn't the whole title. : I taught an SEDC. I had a gun pulled on me, a knife pulled on me, had my shoulder dislocated, etc. But nothing ever scared me until I had this one kid in my class, and I can't tell you exactly what he did. He didn't do anything. He just sat silently and stared. He never smiled. He never talked to the other students. He never talked to me. He just looked at everyone with this look. I can't do it justice, but if this kid isn't either in prison or isn't killing people by now, I will eat my hat. Probably works in a call center, planning his massacre. Nothing as creepy bizarre as yours, but for your consideration. The young man who would pee everywhere in the bathroom by the toilet. It was the class boy-girl bathroom. The quirky fellow obsessed with Sweeney Todd. It's all he would talk or write about. And the young boy who announced that his dad's girlfriend was pregnant and the baby would be a bastard. 7 years old. That one isn't so creepy, just sad because you know his mom told him that. I'm tutoring kids in a literacy program right now, and the little boy I work with, he's 13, is in the process of writing an elaborate story that's a huge rip-off of the Hunger Games, but with more debauchery, lots of debauchery, and every time I get to a part where the violation is implied, he says, "Do you know what happens next?" and then solemnly writes the word RAPE on a scrap of paper. I once had a 6-year-old threaten to slit my throat. It was several years ago, and I forget the exact context of the situation, but I remember I asked him to do something, probably like go sit in the circle for circle time, and he told me he'd slit my throat. Appropriate response is to pick him up, raise him in the air and hold him there. It should establish subconscious dominance. Then I'll shoot them in the face. Shoot policemen in the face. Yes, my 6-year-old in the park, after I told him the police wear bulletproof jackets. : My English teacher used to teach in a rough bit of Glasgow and she's always telling the class stories about it. Apparently, there was a serial shitter who would always crap in the hallways, but nobody ever found him. At least once a week they would find a pig steaming pile. Apparently, there was another kid, only been there a week, who was caught crapping out of a high window. And then you have your standard pubescent boy masturbating in class stories. There are several of them. In one, the kid refused to stop for a few minutes until he finished. The Phantom Deucer. In 5th grade we all had to have kindergarten buddies. I, of course, got the kid who said he was going to stab me with scissors. UK teacher here. A 9-year-old boy threatened to go to America to get a gun and shoot both myself and his tay. I wouldn't put it past him, to be honest. One of my co-workers taught 8th grade last year. She had an 8th grade student tell her, "I want to frick you so hard you can't walk." Not a teacher but a waiter. I heard a little girl ask her parents, "If you were food would you rather be eaten or thrown away?" More deep than creepy, really. That's not creepy, that's philosophical. There's a difference. Unfortunately, no matter how many times I try to explain that, they still won't let me out of solitary. My close friend is a 1st grade teacher and just last week she told me about one of her students. He was staring blankly and she asked him what he was thinking about. His reply: "The clocks from heaven are speaking to me." Creepiest part, there isn't a single clock in her class. Teaching swimming. This one kid was just a little abnormal, not in the goofy kid way, in the what's wrong with him way. When giving him instructions or telling him what to do, he would look back with a blank stare like I was speaking another language. Now he looked normal and did the normal kid things, never got in fights yet showed zero emotion. One day instead of swimming with the other kids, I noticed he was staring at the corner, where all the bugs collect. He tore them apart limb by limb, head, torso all in separate pieces. WTF, I'm thinking. That is a clear sign of a serial killer, so I asked him why. He said, I like the way they wiggle when I take their arms off. I like the way they wiggle when I take their arms off. I hope to frick someone intervenes before he gets bored of bugs and moves on to mammals. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.